Businesswoman throws mud at Maid without knowing who was watching. Before the story begins, tell me, where are you watching from? I really want to know how far these stories are reaching. And if you're passionate about love stories full of emotion, resilience, and new beginnings, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. It really helps the channel grow and motivates me to keep bringing stories that touch the heart. The morning sun lit up the city of Atlanta with a heat that felt even more intense in the outlying neighborhoods. Camilla Raines stepped off the bus with firm steps but a heavy heart. She wore a light gray, simple uniform, freshly ironed. Her worn-out pants slightly hugged her knees, and the white sneakers weren't so white anymore. She carried a faded brown canvas bag where she kept her badge, a water bottle, a carefully wrapped snack, and a bottle of hand sanitizer. Her curly hair, tied tightly into a bun at the nape of her neck, revealed the outline of a face that was both strong and delicate. Her dark, radiant black skin reflected the sunlight with dignity. She wore no makeup, only a cheap sunscreen and the natural glow of someone who faced the world every day, with no shield, but with honor. She took a deep breath in front of the black iron automatic gate. The mansion was imposing. White columns, large windows with French curtains, and a perfectly manicured garden. Lighting panels and filming equipment were already being set up around the infinity pool. Camilla placed her badge around her neck. The outsourced company logo was small, almost invisible. Unlike the massive cameras pointed at the scene, ready to capture every detail of the luxurious products in the new inclusive beauty campaign. As she entered the front door, a white employee with blonde hair pulled into a rushed bun looked at her quickly. "Are you today's replacement?" she asked without a smile. Camilla gave a polite nod. "Yes, ma'am. Camilla Raines." "Then go straight to the outdoor area. Filming starts in an hour. And watch where you step." She walked lightly among the spotlights and scattered cables. She tried not to draw attention, but didn't shrink herself either. She knew who she was. She knew where she came from, and she knew she didn't have the luxury of making mistakes. When she reached the back porch, she prepared the bucket, disinfectant, and cloths. She bent down and started scrubbing the white marble floor. She did it with precision, without rushing, just like her grandmother had taught her. Do it well, even when no one is watching. But someone was. From behind a polished wooden screen, a voice came through, sharp as glass. "I need the floor shining, not covered in footprints." Camilla paused for a second. She didn't turn her head. She lowered her eyes to the floor, then raised them, staring at her own faint reflection in the wet marble. Her dark brown eyes were calm, but alive, deep, alert. There was no submission. There was control. Control of her body, of her emotions, of her pride. In the distance, the camera lights began to flicker. Filming would soon begin. But for Camilla, the real show had already started. And she was invisible in the cast. Or so they thought. The marble dried slowly beneath Camilla's feet as the first voices from the crew echoed through the mansion's garden. The morning breeze carried the artificial scent of freshly bought flowers, a setup meant to look spontaneous. On the other side of the glass door, Madison Blake entered the scene like a star. She was 34, white, tall, slim, with platinum blonde hair styled in soft waves. Her blue eyes, as intense as ice, contrasted with her perfectly applied makeup. She wore a pale pink tailored outfit, nude stiletto heels, a discreet pearl necklace, and a phone with the front camera on. She spoke to herself, to her followers, and to the world, but looked no one in the eyes. "This line was born from my desire for real change. Beauty begins in the female soul," she said with a smile, her lips perfectly aligned with the lens. Meanwhile, on the back lawn, Camilla was picking up energy drink cans and plastic cups forgotten among the bushes. Her knees bent, her back straight, her face blank, only focused. Her hands, marked by time and effort, carefully held a trash bag as if she were carrying more than just waste. She carried the invisible. She walked past a side table where the crew was adjusting lights. One of the assistants, white and young, was excitedly talking about the vegan brunch Madison had served the previous week. "Did you try that matcha cheesecake? It was beautiful and ethical," she said, while holding a lavender-colored smoothie. Camilla pretended not to hear. She continued collecting trash in silence, ignoring the side glances. Inside the house, Madison rehearsed once more. Every woman is the main character of her own story. She turned her back to the phone and raised her arms, practicing a gentle gesture. Her long, flawless nails sparkled under the ring light. Outside, Camilla picked up a torn glove from the ground and discreetly slipped it into her pocket to throw away later. One of the spotlights flickered strongly beside her, and she quickly stepped away, almost tripped. That's when Madison walked through the glass door and caught a glimpse of her. "Be careful there, please," she said without stopping the recording. "This stuff needs to be cleaned before the take." Then she turned back to her phone with another fake smile. "It's not enough to look the part. You have to be real, you know." Camilla stood still for a moment, holding a dirty can in her gloved hand. She quietly watched that woman who spoke so much about truth, but wouldn't be able to recognize the name of the cleaning lady who cleaned up her excesses. She said nothing. She continued her work with the precision of someone who knows that every move is watched, even when it's not noticed. The difference was that she wasn't looking for applause. She was trying to survive, with dignity. While picking up more papers from the garden, a subtle movement caught her attention. On the upper floor, behind a half-open curtain, someone was watching her. She didn't know who, but she felt it. It was only for a second, and then the curtain was closed. The contrast was clear. Inside the house, pretty phrases wrapped in Instagram filters. Outside, silence, sweat, and trash hidden under the grass. Camilla took a deep breath. She held the trash bag tightly against her chest. The day had barely begun, and she already knew it wouldn't be easy. But what she didn't know yet was that this morning would be the starting point of something impossible to erase, and that someone had finally seen her. On the other side of the mansion, upstairs, a wide glass room served as both an office and a vantage point. Inside, Ethan Morgan, 35 years old, white, tall, 6'2", with perfect posture, stood silently in front of a half-open window. His light brown, wavy hair was slightly messy, as if he'd woken up and forgotten about the mirror. He wore dark slacks, a white shirt rolled up at the sleeves, and an old watch on his wrist, a gift from his father that he never took off. Sunlight streamed through the glass, reflecting on his serious features, greyish-green eyes, and reserved expression. Ethan was a man of few words and sharp observation. The only son of a construction tycoon, he had grown up surrounded by luxury, but carried a restlessness that business dinners had never been able to silence. He wasn't close to Madison Blake. He was an investor in her company, out of market convenience, not moral affinity. And that day, his presence had only been requested to show institutional support during the marketing campaign. But he wasn't looking at the cameras. What caught his attention was the subtle movement of a woman near the pool. Camilla, crouched by the deck, was picking up shards of glass from a broken wine glass. None of the crew had noticed her there. She herself hadn't made any fuss. Ethan saw her pick up the largest piece with her gloved hands, and then a thin shard, almost invisible, slipped and cut the side of her palm. A quick, fine slice, but enough for blood to surface. She paused for half a second, pulled a folded cloth from her pocket. It wasn't a bandage. It was a cream-colored piece of fabric, clean, but clearly old. She wrapped it around her hand carefully, discreetly looked around to make sure no one had seen, and continued. Ethan moved closer to the window without realizing he had held his breath. Camilla wasn't just efficient. There was something about the way she moved, like she was carrying the world on her back, yet still walked with grace. She's not invisible, he thought. They just don't know how to see. Down below, Madison laughed with an influencer as she rehearsed another line for the recording. Women need to shine, and to shine, they need to feel safe. Ethan closed his eyes for a second. The irony twisted his stomach. He picked up a folder from the table, but didn't open it. He was distracted. This wasn't just another filming day. Something inside him had shifted, and he didn't know what to call it yet. In the garden, Camilla finished gathering the last shards, now with her cut hand discreetly protected. She didn't complain. She didn't stop. But what she didn't know was that in that moment, for the first time in a long time, someone truly saw her, and that silent, unexpected gaze was about to change everything. Camilla was already walking away from the pool with the trash bag in hand when she heard a growing commotion near the side entrance of the mansion. Cameras on, producers rushing back and forth, and Madison's voice rising louder than any microphone. Let's adjust the lighting on the deck, please. The model needs to look sun-kissed, not blinded by glare. The campaign recording had begun. Camilla took a deep breath and picked up her pace, trying to quietly move out of sight. She had a blue bucket with cleaning products in one hand and folded clean cloths under her arm. Her sneakers, still slightly damp from washing the porch, left faint marks on the light stone floor. She didn't want to be there, but it was her job. And she needed it. On the other side of the set, the campaign model, a young white woman in a light green linen dress, was walking barefoot along the side of the garden, practicing her steps for the camera. While making a wider turn, she didn't see the bucket Camilla had discreetly placed near the wall. She caught it with her heel, stumbled slightly, and nearly fell. The noise of the bucket rolling echoed like thunder among the crew. Camilla quickly turned, grabbed the bucket, and lowered her head. "I'm sorry, that was my mistake," she said in a low voice. But Madison was already coming toward her. Her heels hit the ground hard. Her furious blue eyes shone brighter than the necklace she wore. "Of course that was going to happen," she shouted, throwing her arms in the air. "Look at that wrinkled uniform. These people who don't know how to act. I asked for professionalism, and they send me this?" The atmosphere froze. One of the assistants swallowed hard. The recording camera was still on. No one dared to interrupt. Camilla stood still, holding the bucket in her hands. Her lowered eyes hid the trembling of her eyelids, but not the pain rising in her chest. Madison looked around and spotted a tray used in the previous scene, where there was stage mud mixed with dried flowers, used to simulate a natural clay mask. She grabbed a handful with her own hands and stepped forward without hesitation. "Since you like dirt so much, wash with this," she said, before throwing the thick mixture at Camilla's feet. The dark mud splattered onto her sneakers, the hem of her pants, and even the cloth Camilla had been holding so carefully. A heavy silence fell over the set. Someone let out a nervous laugh. Another pretended not to see. The model looked away. The cameraman hesitated, but didn't stop recording. Camilla said nothing. She slowly crouched down, set the bucket gently on the ground, took one of the clean cloths, and began to clean the dirty floor, still in silence. There was no anger in her actions, only dignity. When she finished, she looked down at her own feet. The sneakers were dirty, with dry mud over the stitching. She took out another cloth, the same one she had used to cover the cut on her hand, and calmly began to wipe her shoes. Madison crossed her arms. "If you're going to take your time, do it out of the frame." Then she turned her back as if nothing had happened. Camilla finished wiping every spot with precision. She stood, cloth still in hand. Her gaze rose for a brief second. Not to confront, but to assert something no one there seemed to grasp. That even covered in mud, she was still whole. Upstairs, Ethan was watching everything from behind the glass window. He slowly closed the curtain. Not because he didn't want to see, but because in that moment he understood this wasn't just another ordinary incident. It was an open wound, a public one. And he had seen it. The end of the day came with a grey sky over Atlanta, as if the city itself knew something had broken there, something that wouldn't be easily put back together. Camilla returned home in silence, earbuds in but with no sound playing. No music, no news. Just the muffled noise of the bus and the weight of the memory. On her lap, the canvas bag still stained with mud. In her hand, the cream-colored cloth now dry and stained with blood and dirt. In her eyes, a silent, tired resistance, but alive. Hours later, the video of the humiliation was circulating all over the internet. The footage was clear. Camilla in uniform, kneeling, mud running down her feet. Madison with her hand outstretched, laughing in front of the camera. In the background, the sound of the team's uncomfortable laughter. The caption on the post was short but sharp. Empathy in the speech, mud in the practice. The algorithm didn't forgive. Within minutes, the video spread like wildfire. Activist groups reposted it. Gossip pages tried to twist it. Madison's own company stayed silent. But what no one could ignore was the frozen image of the woman in silence, standing, eyes steady, and hands dirty. She didn't beg. She didn't scream. She didn't ask for help. But her silence screamed louder than any written outrage. In the comments, the divide was clear. Some defended Madison, calling the video taken out of context. Others demanded her immediate firing, suspension of the brand, ethical accountability. This isn't a mistake. It's character. She represents so many who go through this every day. Camilla could be my mom, my sister, me. In Ethan's office, the light from his laptop lit up his focused face. He had spent the night thinking. He couldn't erase the image of Camilla wiping her own shoes with dignity. He opened his personal account. He was quiet online, rarely posted, had fewer followers than his own employees. But in that moment, he wasn't thinking about marketing. He was thinking about truth. He wrote slowly, simple words, clear. Sometimes, the one you try to erase is the one who lights up the world. He attached the post to an image, the video frame of Camilla standing, covered in mud, staring into the distance like someone refusing to bow. He hit publish. No hashtags, no tags, no explanation. But it was enough. The post exploded within minutes. Comments, likes, shares. The public quickly connected the dots. Ethan Morgan, silent investor in the brand, had been there, and now he was speaking. The press raced for sources. Camilla's identity was discovered. Images of her boarding the bus that morning started circulating. In the community where she lived, neighbors began to whisper. At work, the agency's phone wouldn't stop ringing. And inside Camilla, something began to stir. Not euphoria, but a deep unease. She didn't want fame, never wanted a spotlight. But the world, finally, saw her. And this exposure didn't come with glamour. It came with fear, with questions, with consequences she still couldn't measure. Outside, neighbors whispered. Inside, she sat on the couch, eyes fixed. The TV was on, and there she was, alone, dirty, silent, but standing. The next night, Madison Blake's name filled most online headlines, but not in the way she expected. News sites, opinion columns, and influencer profiles discussed the scandal that now had a name: the mud of empathy. The consequences began to fall like dominoes. First, a European sponsor publicly announced the termination of their contract. Then, a former employee, black like Camilla, posted a video describing humiliating situations, off-camera yelling, and promises of promotion never fulfilled. The testimony went viral. More followed. Words like microaggression, elitism disguised as inclusion, and covert racism multiplied across social media. Madison's image, once admired for her talk on female empowerment, began to unravel in real time. She tried to fight back the only way she knew, with image. She recorded videos in her walk-in closet with soft lighting, flawless makeup, and a rehearsed voice. If anyone felt offended, that was never my intention. I believe in the power of women in all forms. But the internet didn't buy the tone. It sounded fake, and it was. With every new attempt to defend herself, the rejection grew. Meanwhile, across Atlanta, Camila was fighting a different and quiet battle. On Tuesday morning, she received a call from the cleaning company. The supervisor's voice was dry, to the point. "Camila, unfortunately, due to exposure of our brand, we're going to have to end your contract. It's nothing personal, okay? Just precaution." She didn't reply right away, just looked at the kitchen floor, where the cracked linoleum seemed older that morning. She hung up without arguing. That same day, when picking up her younger brother from school, she noticed the stairs. Two teenagers laughed in the hallway corner, and one of them whispered loud enough to hear, "There goes the famous janitor's sister." Her brother, Lucas, lowered his head. He was only 13, but the world was already marking him harshly. At home, the mood was heavy. Rent was overdue. The fridge was getting empty. The only good news was that their grandmother, though frail, still held strength in her eyes. That night, Camilla sat on the couch with her hands over her face. The living room curtains were drawn, the TV off, the house silent. But inside, everything in her was screaming. "Maybe it'd be better to disappear," she whispered. "If I'd just stayed quiet, invisible like I always was." Then she felt a fragile hand on her shoulder. It was her grandmother, with fingers thin and stained by time, but firm like ancient roots. "You weren't born to be invisible, my child. You're a root, not a leaf carried by the wind." Camilla lifted her eyes, and for the first time in days, let a tear fall. Not out of shame, but out of exhaustion, of accumulated resilience. "But everything's falling apart, Grandma." "Let it fall, Camilla. Let what can't stand collapse. That's how we build things that last. With truth, with solid ground." Outside, the rain began to fall, and in that small, cramped house came the first silence that didn't hurt. The next morning, the sky still carried traces of the previous night's rain. The city was damp, quiet, as if everything had slowed down. Camilla was washing the dishes in silence, her eyes focused on nothing. Water flowed over her hands, now dry and marked, with the small cut from the week before still visible. The radio was off. The house, so quiet, felt like it was holding its breath. Then the doorbell rang. She dried her hands on the towel tied to her waist and walked to the door. She wasn't expecting anyone. When she opened it, she saw a tall man, sober posture, wearing dark pants, simple shoes, and a grey shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He looked out of place in that neighborhood, but not because of arrogance, because of respect. "Good morning. Camilla Rains?" he asked, his voice firm but gentle. She narrowed her eyes, suspicious. "Yes, that's me." My name is Ethan Morgan. May I speak with you for a few minutes?" She hesitated. She knew that name, had seen it on websites, in the news, but she never imagined the man who had shared her video, with those words, would show up at her door, with no cameras, no audience. "Come in," she said in a soft voice. He sat at the edge of the couch, hands clasped, looking around with respect at the modest space. He noticed the books stacked next to the TV, her brother's toys in cardboard boxes, the dry plants in the window still trying to survive, like her. "I was there, the day of the shoot," he began. "I saw everything, but it took me a while to understand what I'd seen." Camila watched him seriously, arms crossed, still standing. "I saw a woman being humiliated, and I saw how no one did anything, myself included, but I also saw how you stayed standing, how you cleaned your own shoes without lowering your head. That told me more about you than any speech ever could." She pressed her lips together, trying to control what she felt. "Why are you here?" "Because I have a project, something real. I want to open a training center for women like you. Hardworking, resilient. I want them to learn their rights, to have opportunities to grow, to study, to start businesses, and I want you to lead it with me." Camila went quiet. She looked down. The offer sounded too big, too noble. And all she could think about at that moment was the overdue light bill and her brother sleeping in the next room. "Out of charity?" she asked sharply, raising her eyes. Ethan slowly shook his head. "No, out of justice." Camila took a deep breath. The anger was still there, mixed with suspicion, with fear. But something new was also emerging, like an old ember being rekindled. "You saw all that," she whispered. "The mud, the yelling, the way she treated me." "Yes," he replied. "And I saw something else too, the woman you are, and the one the world needs to see." She looked down. Her hands trembled, even as they stayed still. She thought of her grandmother, of the words she'd heard the night before. "You're a root." Camila closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, there was something new. Not optimism, not full hope, but a small crack. A possibility. And for the first time since the video, she said a word that sounded like a beginning. Maybe. Camila woke up before sunrise that Monday. The house was still asleep. Her grandmother lightly snored in the back room, and Lucas was still curled up under the patched blanket. She looked at her own reflection in the bathroom mirror. Dark circles, hair tied back with a burgundy scarf, and eyes, more awake than ever. The decision had been made the night before, after hours of silence and doubt. She didn't want to be a symbol of anything, but she also couldn't accept being invisible anymore. In the weeks that followed, Camila dove into the new project like someone learning to breathe again. She arrived early at the old renovated warehouse that would serve as the center's headquarters. She cleaned, organized, made coffee for the team, but also learned about management, basic finances, communication, workers' rights. At night, she attended GED classes at a public school across the city, came home with sore feet and a steady heartbeat. Soon, the center began to attract other women, Black, Latina, immigrants, single mothers, caregivers, women like her. Camila didn't just welcome these stories, she knew them in her skin. And because of that, trust came quickly. She started coordinating the groups, organizing community events, inviting professionals to give talks. Her voice, once silent, now filled the space naturally, without shouting, but with clarity, with truth. The media began to notice her. A local magazine published a piece titled "From the Shadows to the Center," but she rejected the headline. "I was never in the shadows," she told the reporter. "They just never let me turn on the light." Ethan followed everything closely, but without overstepping. He was discreet, helped with structure, contacts and resources, but let Camila be the heart of the project. Still, something in him was changing every day. The way he saw, felt, understood the world beyond numbers. One night, after an event ended, the team had already left. Only the two of them remained in the hall. The chairs were stacked, empty cups on the table, and soft instrumental music still played in the background. Camilla sat on the wooden floor, leaning back against the wall, exhausted. Ethan did the same. They sat side by side, without hurry, without pressure. He looked ahead, then at her. The yellow hallway light softened both their features. For a moment, time stopped. "You taught me to listen in silence," Ethan said, his voice lower than usual, "to feel for real." Camilla didn't respond right away. She just looked at him, not with surprise, but with something that had been growing inside her for some time. Respect, connection, and a kind of affection that didn't ask for space, but earned it. "It wasn't easy to get here," she murmured. "And that's what makes it worth it," he replied. Camilla smiled, a tired smile, but whole. For the first time in years, she felt that her presence there wasn't just tolerated, it was needed. And what was growing between them wasn't longing, it was rebuilding. In the days that followed, the training center flourished like a tree planted in soil once hardened by indifference. The walls gained color, the halls gained voices, and faces once marked by fear now carried hope. Camilla and Ethan continued working together, and though everyone around them commented on the energy between the two, neither of them rushed anything. There were no grand declarations, no gestures demanding attention. It was all done in silence, naturally, like a river that doesn't need an announcement to keep flowing. Ethan always stopped by the community cafe before meetings and brought a cup for Camilla. He'd learned she liked it strong, no sugar, and with a lid. "Because I forget to drink it and it gets cold," she had once said. Now he always remembered, without her needing to ask again. Camilla, in turn, started leaving anonymous notes on his desk. Small pieces of paper with handwritten quotes, always signed with just an initial. One day, he found, "I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." Maya Angelou. He held that paper for minutes, then tucked it into his wallet. Their days were busy, filled with new stories, challenges and rebuildings. But between reports and workshops, there were glances that lingered a little longer than needed, shared smiles in silence, a connection that went beyond work. Until one night, Ethan invited her to see the new space of the center that would be inaugurated the following week. It was the same garden where, months earlier, Camilla had been humiliated. The space had been completely renewed, with light wooden benches, a small community garden, and soft lighting designed by young volunteer architects. Camilla walked slowly through the garden. She stopped in front of the same spot where the mud had been thrown at her feet. The ground was now fresh grass, the same place, but a new time. Ethan approached, standing beside her, both silent, looking at the full moon lighting the space like a quiet stage. "Did you know this garden was the most rejected part of the project?" he said. "No one wanted to use it. They said it carried too much weight." "And now?" she asked. "Now it's the most beautiful." Camilla looked at him, not smiling, but with eyes full of meaning. "This isn't redemption," she said firmly. "I'm not a project that needs to be fixed." Ethan didn't look away. "I know. This is rebuilding." She took a deep breath, eyes misty but steady, and for the first time, she didn't feel afraid to let her guard down. "So there," standing under the moonlight, in the same place where she'd once been, reduced to nothing in front of everyone. Camilla stood as everything she was, whole. And he kissed her. No rush, no urgency, no promises, only the truth of the moment. The afternoon turned golden over Atlanta as the lights of the new social center lit up for the first time. The old warehouse, once abandoned and surrounded by cracked concrete, was now a living space, with wide windows, gardens all around, and rooms painted with murals created by volunteers. The sound of women's voices filled the air with laughter, curiosity, and hope. Camilla stood at the main entrance, watching everything. She wore a simple cream-colored dress made of light fabric. Her curly hair was loose in natural waves, and her gaze, no longer the same as months ago. It carried scars, yes, but also its own light. Beside her, Ethan discreetly adjusted the microphone for the ceremony. He wouldn't take the stage. This night belonged to her. The press was there. City officials, community leaders, former employees of Madison, now present, as students or collaborators. The main hall was filled with chairs arranged in a circle. In the center, only a small wooden podium and an arrangement of flowers from the center's own garden. Camilla climbed the 2 steps to the stage with misty eyes. She took the microphone with steady hands, paused for a second, then, with a firm voice, began. For a long time, I believed I only had 2 options in life, to go unnoticed or be removed, that my place was always the corner of the room, the back of the bus, the shadows of someone else's stage. She paused. The room was completely silent. They called me invisible, a bother, a thing. But what they didn't know is that every uniform hides a world, and that every seed is born from the ground, even mud. The audience held its breath. Today, this space exists because someone believed in me, but most of all, because I learned to believe in myself. And that's what I want to give every woman who walks through these doors, that they know they have the right to center stage. Even when the world insists on pushing them to the back. Discreet tears were wiped away in the crowd. This is not about charity. It's about justice. And justice begins when someone finally refuses to lower their eyes. She gently placed the microphone back on the podium. There was nothing more to say. The applause followed. Long, intense, true. Later, after the event, Camilla walked with Ethan behind the center. The garden lights were on, bathing the space in a soft amber glow. The same lawn where she had been humiliated months before was now a path of celebration. Ethan stopped in the middle of the grass, looked down, then at her, took off his shoes without saying a word, stood there barefoot on the damp grass. "I want to step where you stepped, with respect," he said softly. Camilla looked at him for a moment, took a deep breath, then removed her own shoes. Barefoot side by side, they walked slowly across the same ground that once held shame. Now, it was a place of dignity. It wasn't about romance. It was about equality. About a kind of love not built on promises, but on presence. About new beginnings born not from forgiveness, but from the strength of someone who, even wounded, refuses to disappear. And there, without needing to say anything more, Camilla understood. She didn't need to conquer the world. She just needed to stay standing. And now tell me, what did you think of this story? Leave your rating from 0 to 10 in the comments. I really want to know how this journey touched you. If this story moved you, like the video, share it with someone who also needs to hear this message, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next stories. And before you go, I've picked another powerful story that's sure to touch your heart. It's right here next to this one. Just click and watch.